What's up, everybody? We are back. Betting You rolls on. We're getting to the tail end of the season, so that means the stakes are even higher. Only a couple more weeks to hopefully close the season in style, and that's what we're here to do. We're going to break down all the marquee matchups for this week's slate of games, tell you what you need to know, who we've already bet, what to keep an eye on. Probably have I'll slide in some egregious takes. We'll talk about the UMass coaching search, which is obviously very, very important to the landscape of not just the country, but the world. I am Ben Reza. That's Matt Gajewski. Sir, you just said to me the minute before the camera flipped on, is the playoff somewhat crystallized at this point, barring really weird stuff? I think the answer might be yes.
I think some of it is. The Big 12 obviously is not. The SEC has some weird stuff. Bama is somehow favored to get into the playoff. I think, I'm seeing minus 500 for them at spots. I think that's too much.
Yeah, that's too much.
And Texas A&M is plus 600. Those are odds that I think are very worthwhile. You can always gamble on a Big 12 team. That's just going to largely shake itself out over the coming days. But yeah, I don't see how Boise State isn't more than minus 350. I don't know how they don't get in at this point outside of Army upsetting Notre Dame. Notre Dame minus 500. I think that's a good bet right now. Same odds as Alabama's pretty silly. They just have to get through USC. And yeah, I mean, some of the other teams I think are pretty much stone locks. I don't even see odds for Ohio State, but Indiana minus 350, they're like a stone lock. They'd have to lose both their games to not get in. Some of these are a little surprising to me, man.
So I have been not adamant, but I have mentioned several times on this show that I think Indiana could have been left out. The run out for that to happen has not happened. They have gotten a nice run out lately. Teams are losing all over the place. All the teams that I thought could have stole those bids lost, where you could have got 2 ACC with Miami. You could have potentially...
I still think you do. I still think you get 2 ACC.
Really?
As long as SMU and Miami face each other in the conference title, yeah.
I don't think SMU gets in with 2 losses. They should.
Even with the title berth?
Yeah. That would be interesting. Do you think
BYU
it's
between
gets in?
them and maybe at that point, let's say Bama doesn't lose again, then I agree.
So I know it's not the same, but to me, what's a little weird, it's just a little weird, but say you get this run out, Miami beats SMU, and say Colorado beats BYU. You'd have both of them with 2 losses, but BYU beat SMU. And I don't think BYU's getting in if they lose.
I agree. The most interesting thing is what happens in the SEC, because you have tough games for a lot of teams outside of Georgia. Georgia's a stone lock. Georgia has no conference games left. They play UMass and Georgia Tech because of their weird non-con stuff. So they're locked in. They've basically solidified their place in the SEC, and they're going to be massive favorites in the last 2 games. Texas plays Texas A&M. That's the biggest deciding factor. If the playoffs started today, they would both be in, but they have a head-to-head later in the year that could theoretically knock one of them out. And then you have 2 other 2-loss conference teams waiting in the wings in Ole Miss and Bama. Ole Miss plays Florida and Mississippi State. Bama plays Oklahoma and Auburn. Tennessee's also hanging around. They play UTEP and Vandy. I think they would need some pretty big chaos stuff in order to get in over those other 2 teams. But yeah, a lot will be determined. Fortunately for A&M, they have a 5-1 conference record, as does Texas. So, the head-to-head there isn't even that important. A lot of this is just these teams need to stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, you keep stacking wins, you're going to move up just by default of teams losing. I know we kind of just talked about this very briefly. Do you see any scenario whatsoever that the Big 12 gets 2 teams?
No.
Okay, neither do I. So
their non-con is not good. Their performance outside of the SMU win, which was so lucky. I mean, yeah. I think it's going to come. You're getting 4 Big 10. I don't see any way, unless Indiana loses to Purdue or something. You're getting the 4 Big 10 teams, we think. No. We're getting at least 3 SEC. Then it comes down to how does the ACC perform, because it's unless SMU or Miami trips up in the last 2 games, and they're both going to be massive favorites the next 2 weeks, Clemson's boxed out because of tiebreakers. So the ACC is basically figured out. It's Miami versus SMU in the title. Do they take a 2-loss team from that? I think that'll largely depend on how the SEC performs down the stretch. But I think there's way more of a chance they take a 2-loss Miami over a 2-loss Big 12 team. I think there's almost no chance we get more than one Big 12.
I'd agree with most of that. I think there's a much higher chance they take a 2-loss Miami than a 2-loss SMU.
If there's 4 2-loss SEC teams, which there very well could be, I think you're getting one ACC.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's going to be fascinating.
And the rest of the way, like Notre Dame's a lock, Boise's a lock, especially with Washington State's lost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted to know what would have happened if Boise State, they were in a little dogfight there with San Jose State last week. That would have been interesting.
I don't see a way unless they lose a game or maybe two that they can.
What if they lost?
This.
That would have been.
Well, they do have to win their championship. So, like, the biggest threat is Boise loses to UNLV in the title because the stipulations are not just the highest ranked team. Isn't it the highest ranked conference championship from the G5?
I don't know.
I think you need to win your G5 conference and be the highest ranked. So their biggest threat is UNLV in the title game.
Maybe Tulane will get in. Anyway,
that they play Army in the AAC title game. And crazy enough, Tulane has 1 game left. Army has 3. Army's about to get slaughtered. We'll talk about that.
Yes, they are. And we're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that. We're going to start with, who would have thunk it? I didn't think it could have been a game of this caliber, but it's Ohio State and Indiana. I mean, what can you say? I think the spread is about right. I like Ohio State in the game. I've liked Ohio State all year. I think Ohio State's the best team. They certainly have not played like the best team, but I still think up and down they're going to get it together at the right time. Inside 2 scores. My questions, of course, are what do you think of the game? And then if somehow Indiana beats Ohio State, is Ohio State in any danger?
I don't think so, but the 2 losses there are way more significant than like 2-loss SEC. Despite what people may think, the Big Ten is still behind the SEC, and I think it's pretty clearly, it's not at the top. It's really just your strength of schedule at the bottom. Anytime, like, let's look at Ohio State. Actually, you know what? Let's look at Indiana because this is much more telling. Your Big Ten conference play was UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, and Michigan. There's like 3 decent teams in there and 4 horrifying teams. That's not even including non-con. So part of the reason the Big Ten has 4 teams that are likely to get in the playoff outside of chaos is just you have a bottom end of this conference that gives you like 3 or 4 gimme wins depending on the schedule you played. It's the same thing with Ohio State. They played Michigan State, rolled them. They did take care of business against Iowa, which is pretty solid. Lost to Oregon. Beat Nebraska in a close game. Beat Penn State in a close game, both of those single digits. But then 45-0 against Purdue, that's a bye week. 31-7 against Northwestern, that's a bye week. You just don't have the strength of schedule in and out that the SEC does. But with that said, I agree with you on the Ohio State talent. The only players they've really lost are on the offensive line, Josh Emmons, Zen Mikowski. They've been able to like paper over that a little bit. Tyleik Williams, I think, returns. He's a defensive tackle who's been missing time, but they've had 2 bye weeks back-to-back. You don't need him to play against Purdue. It just is what it is. On Indiana, they did lose their guard, Drew Evans, to an Achilles in practice, which was not great. But they've been pretty strong on the offensive line all year, to my surprise. They've had some injuries in the preseason that haven't affected them. I agree with you that the spread's about right. My main questions with Indiana right now are just strength of schedule. Now you're taking a significant step up in competition against Ohio State, who is a top 5 roster in the country. They haven't faced anything close to this. They have passed every single test, covering spreads every single week. So the expectation for Indiana is higher than what we would have expected coming into the year at this point. But Ohio State is like, this is a different ballpark for Indiana. I will say it's Indiana or pass. I'm not betting Ohio State. They've looked very bad at times and played with their food. Some of their weaknesses right now, offensive line just with 2 backups. And then Will Howard, for all his strengths, he's been basically a fancy game manager for them. He doesn't have to do a lot when you're throwing to Carnell, Tate, Emeka Ibuka, and Jeremiah Smith. But the defense is awesome, and that's what's going to carry this team. Even against Indiana, I don't think they're going to give up a lot of production. It's close, man. I'm not going to take this, but great game, best game of the slate. Definitely make some time to watch it. I don't know about betting it, though.
I'm probably going to end up taking Ohio State. We're going to find out how good Indiana really is because Indiana's been awesome. One of the coolest teams in the country, but realistically, honestly, I mean, who the hell has Indiana beat?
We just went through it. They beat nobody.
Yeah, nobody. Like, it's just not there. It's just not there. And you can only play who you play. And they've answered the challenge and they rolled a bunch of teams. They haven't played anyone of Ohio State's caliber, and they certainly haven't on the road.
Yeah, problem is like the three good games they had, Nebraska, Michigan, and I don't know, maybe Washington, Maryland maybe could be fourth. All four of those teams are going to finish below their win total. All of them are worse than we thought.
Yeah. And none of them have even remotely the personnel that Ohio State has.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close.
Totally different situation. We're going to find out. But yeah.
Is there anything you like mismatch-wise that you think Ohio State can exploit? I think I could be talked into Ohio State based on all the points you made, but I think it's just a stay away from me. I don't know.
I mean, it's not like a fatal flaw. I just think Ohio State is going to get pressure. I think they'll be able to just do the kind of what they've
done that on everyone.
That's what I mean. They're just going to do what they do, and I don't know if Indiana is going to be able to stop it. Like, they just have so many weapons, and I worry about it. I think the game could get away from Indiana a little bit.
Lucky for you, Indiana fans. I don't think this game matters for them anymore. They did
I.
everything they needed to until this point to have this game not matter. And Ohio State loss shouldn't kill you if you're Indiana.
No, definitely not. On the road, the only way I think it could even remotely factor in, I'd still say it's doubtful, if of course this is doubtful, if they lose like 60-0, that's not going to look good, but the chances of that are very slim. All right, let's go to the SEC because certainly these teams are going to factor in, only one of them to playoff relevance, but the other one is playing really good football, no doubt about it. And I'm talking about Ole Miss against Florida. Ole Miss has got a lot going on, 10-point road favorites, but man, I got to give Florida some credit. They're playing, at least they're playing, unlike a gutless LSU. I mean, I just get them out of the conversation of all things. Do you think Ole Miss gets tripped up here, or do you actually think there's some value?
I think there's a little bit of value Florida's direction. I'm not sure if it's enough for me to take a side, but I think this Florida team is just underrated by everyone coming into the year. They're very young, and one thing that I've noticed recently, and I think the metrics are starting to indicate, is now that these really high-profile recruits are getting some snaps because a lot of starters are hurt, they've started to develop and show that they have some talent. Like, Lagway's been awesome for them this year. He's shaky at times. You see it. He's definitely a freshman, but the underlying efficiency stuff is awesome. He's averaging 11 yards per attempt. That's over a first down every time he throws the ball. 14 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. All 5 have been converted into interceptions. You could even argue he's run kind of bad. They have a good run game. They just got back Montrell Johnson. The offensive line has been a big surprise to me. They papered over a lot of issues via the transfer portal, and it worked. They're 13th in pass blocking, 29th in run blocking. I'm shocked that they were able to do this. The real problem's been their defense. They're 114th in coverage. That's largely the product of injury. They're missing multiple players back there. I won't get into every single one. And that will be a problem against Jackson Dart. And they're coming off a bye, so I think they'll probably be a little healthier. Expect like Trey Harris maybe to give it a go with the All-American receiver. But this team, Florida that is, has done a better job recently on their back end. They've only allowed over 8 yards per attempt to Quinn Ewers. They handled Garrett Nussmeier 5.5 yards per attempt, did a decent job against Beck and Iamaleava. The defense is better than I thought. I think you will still see Ole Miss score points, but I don't think it's going to be like the floodgates opening, Ole Miss at will in this spot. And plus, to speak on the Ole Miss injuries, they have a fair amount of them. I don't know who's going to be back now that they've had the bye. You saw their injury report in, week 11? They had like 30 players on it. It was crazy. Henry Parrish is not coming back at running back. I don't think that really matters, but Trey Harris is someone I'm watching. They had 3 players in the offensive line out. Most recently, Julius Buelo missed, which was new. So watch the offensive line. That could be an issue. Florida does have a decent pass rush. And then they did have a lot of players that were questionable heading into that game who didn't play their full roles, like J.J. Pegues on the defensive line, Jaden Kennedy. I want to see if these guys are on the injury report or not. But yeah, I think Florida is probably just a little better than a 10-point-ish underdog in this spot.
And the line's moving around. You can catch a 10.5 out there. So that's a key point. You're not extra juice is not there. There's a 10.5 at -110. So if you want the Gators,
Ole Miss also hasn't played like a really difficult schedule.
I mean, Ole Miss has got all the talent. They're the one of the few teams. They, to me, really blew. They lost the games that their losses were not the games that I thought they would lose, and their wins were maybe not the wins that I thought they would have. Like, it's just been a weird year. They gave a couple games away. They could be undefeated. They also could have 4 losses.
But even the South Carolina game was impressive, but losing to Kentucky, they did have a 51% post-game win expectancy, but you're messing around with. Yeah, you can't put yourself in that position. So even though you should have won technically, like by the thinnest of margins, and you lost by the thinnest of margins, and LSU, man, that game was. But neither of those coaches deserve any credit. But they only beat Oklahoma by 12 points. That's not great. Arkansas,
the Georgia game, obviously, was.
Georgia's the big win. Arkansas scored 31 on this team. They've showed enough blips on the radar. Florida's been impressive, really, against everyone they've played outside of Texas, and they had a walk-on start for them.
Yeah.
And Miami, I guess. That was
Miami to open the year, but still, that was a long time ago. Auburn looked great last week. They're getting it together. Slight caveat, they played Louisiana Monroe. But, we'll take what we can get for Auburn. I got a glimpse of the future there with, I think his name is Walter White, the Breaking Bad guy, something like that. Saw their 5-star quarterback play. He swiftly fumbled, but that's another story for another time. Texas A&M rolls into town, 2.5-point spread. You can't slip up here. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, Texas A&M is in a really interesting spot, like controlling their own destiny for the playoff and still not really having a clear quarterback starter. Marcel Reed is going to be that guy, but I don't think the leash is clear. I actually have Auburn ahead of Texas A&M in a lot of efficiency metrics, but I just flat out cannot. What was that?
It said, here we go. I know how this
goes. I can't bet Auburn, especially against a real team now. I think part of the problem with Texas A&M has been injuries and their inability to land on a QB. There's no way around this. Marcel Reed has been better than Connor Wegman. Moving to him is the right decision. Passing efficiency favors Marcel Reed, not by a significant margin, but the main difference you get is the efficiency on the ground. It's like almost 2 full yards per carry more when Reed touches the ball, which is something that's important because there have been injuries to Texas A&M's offensive line. They're a little healthier now, but they're still 57th in pass blocking, 38th in run blocking. And they did lose some guys for the year, like Mark Naboo is out for the year at center. So that's important that you have a quarterback that can run. Plus, Le'Veon Moss got hurt at running back. So now not only do you have to turn to like a third stringer in Amari Daniels, he's not your typical third stringer, much better than normal because we lost Ruben Owens in the preseason. But having someone else that can carry the load for you, even a little bit with your QB, I think makes a lot of difference here. They did lose Cyrus Allen at receiver. That's a position of strength, so I'm not super worried. And then their defense has gotten a lot healthier. On the other side, Auburn lost 2 of their starting defensive backs earlier this year. It's been a problem for them since that happened. They've dropped to 61st in coverage, and that was one of the strengths of this team. Now, against the run, they've still been able to defend that area of the field, but they have weaknesses in their back 7 due to injuries. So Marcel Reed, I think, should be able to throw the ball over this Auburn defense. And Texas A&M quietly has been a very good defense this year, improving throughout the year. They're 29th now. They're 14th against the run. I don't really buy Peyton Thorne beating me at this point. I will say it's still true. Peyton Thorne, 7 interceptions, 4 turnover-worthy plays. He's run as bad as you possibly can. But yeah, I'm just not taking Auburn at this point. It's a Texas A&M or pass. It's probably going to be a pass for me with both these teams being a little volatile at quarterback and A&M having to hit the road.
I'm not betting Auburn, but I can confidently say I'm not betting Texas A&M either.
I'd rather just bet Texas A&M to make the playoff right now. Like if you think they win this game,
but
go ahead.
Well,
that's plus 600.
I mean, plus 600, I get. That is a good number. But so are you basically saying, I mean, I guess you are. Yeah, but so you're parlaying A&M, right? Money line?
I don't think they have to win the next game.
You think they get in with 3?
I don't know.
I mean,
That's like,
it's weird losses because obviously Notre Dame is a wild card, but man,
no, I'm not saying they. Are you saying they lose both these games?
no, I'm saying they lost to Notre Dame.
Yeah. So then, if they lost this game, they would have 2. I think you only need to win one of your next 2. Oh, excuse me, that would put them at 3. Yeah,
That's what
right.
I mean. They have one SEC loss.
Yeah, never mind. I take that back.
That's where it's tricky because it's like, but it sucks for them because I mean that's why that game.
My revised opinions of not betting A&M, regardless. Never mind.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I do. I don't think they can get through, even though their quality of losses would be massively impressive. The 2 of them, it's just.
I don't know. The South Carolina is not a great.
That's a weird
good one.
Typical. I can tell you what happens. By the way, I can see the future here. This has all the makings of A&M loses to Auburn and then they beat Texas, and it's just like, okay, you've disgraced yourself twice now. But yeah, again, some of these markets are going to pop up. It's a perfect time to mention, by the way, we got plenty more games. But if you're interested in maybe talking through the playoffs at length, placing some of these futures, it's all available in Discord. You see these channels, you see what we've got going on. You see the Tails app where plays are being dropped all the time, notifications right to your device. It's fantastic. I would encourage everyone to get over there. But how about this? Why not just get over there for free? And what I'm referring to is this page. You see this? You go here. The link is in the description. It's going to say Get Tails for free. It's our partners page. And what I mean by that, it's got all these different sports books. Bet365, BetMGM, Caesars, Underdog, whatever book interests you. Check out their bonuses, of course. Not only are you going to get those bonuses if you claim the offer, you have to do it on this page. For any of them, you will get 1 month on Tails of whoever you want. And it's stacked. So if you do 2, you've got 2 months to play with. You could do 1 and 1. You could do 2 months of whoever you want. You go right to the marketplace and you choose your person, whoever you want for different sport, whatever it may be. This is what I'm talking about. You're getting the best of both worlds. Not only are you going to get access to a new book, a book that maybe you've been thinking about playing on, you're getting a month for free of whatever Tails marketplace you want. It's right there on this page. Follow these instructions. Easy, effective, and extremely, extremely valuable. Now we got to talk about, I'm a little pissed off at myself that I knew BYU was going to get caught. I just thought it was going to be this week. But I swear to God, Kansas is playing maybe the best in the entire conference right now. They knock them off. So what are we left with now? This is just such a weird situation for the Big 12. Talk to me about BYU and Arizona State.
BYU, I don't know. They're like back-end metrics are all behind some of these teams, which makes them a tricky team to evaluate. They definitely were running
again. This is hilarious.
Yeah, this team ran hot at the beginning of the season. Arizona State's always going to be tricky to project because they had a ton of starters that missed the beginning of the season, but I think their defense is much better than their 88th ranking indicates, especially against the pass. They've been very vulnerable against ground attacks. DJ Giddens just had 9.5 yards per carry. RJ Harvey was at 5.1. And through the air, they've been awesome at defending signal callers. I don't know if this is like a talent thing or just the Big 12 has really questionable signal callers on most teams, like Avery Johnson, 6.5 yards per attempt, Dylan Rizek, 6.7, Alan Bowman, 5.7, Brennan Sorsby, 6.6, Rising, he got hurt in the game, 5.6. Jalen Daniels is the only one that really got them. So maybe their defensive metrics are a little better than we indicate. Do we think Retzlaff can get them? He's been a little volatile, 58.5% completion, 7.9 yards per attempt. He has 13 turnover-worthy plays, which isn't great. He does run, which is positive for this team. But I think Arizona State might just be the better overall team, and you get to play at home in this spot. Offensive line-wise, I think it's pretty comparable. Arizona State is much better at pass blocking than run blocking, but they've also gotten some guys back from injury. A lot of these offensive linemen that were hurt tried to return for BYU last week with sort of limited effectiveness. They were down 3 starters. They got 2 of them back, which leaves only Braden Keim out for this team. But there's still some injuries to worry about. Crew Wakely at safety got hurt in their last game. Cody Epps only played 1 snap. Keanu Hill at tight end took a massive hit. I've never really been a strong BYU backer. I've only bet them when they played teams like Oklahoma State, who are just teams I'm like mega fading. Arizona State is the team I actually kind of like in this spot now that they've gotten healthier. They've gotten good production from Scatibo at running back. Tyson's been a real surprise at receiver. Levitt is a fancy game manager, but he only has 3 turnover-worthy plays. And that's just it. They play like this low volatility style of football. And so many teams in this conference are volatile as all hell. It's just like if you let Kansas, West Virginia, and all these other teams throw their interceptions, which they always do, Sam Levitt never does, you win a lot of these games. If you win a turnover battle like 1-0 against another Big 12 team, like you're probably winning.
No doubt about it. And this has just been a ridiculous conference all year. BYU, I mean, obviously.
The quarterback play in this conference has been so bad.
Best quarter. Well, no, never mind. Shedeur. I was gonna say best quarterback.
The best one in this conference.
Who's the second best quarterback in this conference?
That's what I was gonna ask you. Coming into the year, I would have ranked them maybe like Garrett Green,
Jalen Daniels.
I would have put him high. He's been way better recently, and the only difference is he stopped throwing interceptions.
I would have put Garrett Green second. That just shows you where I'm at.
Well, Garrett Green had 3 turnover-worthy plays last year. How many does he have this year? I'm going to look it up.
He has 3 per game, every game.
I mean, that's it. Yeah, I mean, that's probably true.
I'm
going to find it. We can go.
No, I know no one cares about this, but I don't care. Has second best quarterback in the Big 12.
I would have probably put KJ Jefferson up there.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. He's like the 4th best on UCF.
On team.
Dylan Rizek is the actual answer, but win some, lose some. Sorsby.
He's not bad. Sorsby's been pretty good. I don't know.
Honestly, all jokes aside, I know you're maybe not the big. I would have put Avery Johnson second.
He just can't throw.
No, I thought he had a chance to have a super big year.
I did too because he runs. He was a lot of people's Heisman pick. Garrett Green has 11 turnover-worthy plays. He had 3 all last year, but he's only played in 8 games.
That seems low. Not even joking.
I'm going to break it down by game. I know he's been better. His first half of the year was horrendous. It's been pretty bad.
No, it's just bad. It's all bad. It was bad last. It's all bad. Yeah, I'll keep it simple. This Arizona State or pass for me. I'm going to wait and see if I can get a flat 3. BYU shorting will continue. Colorado and Kansas. I think this is the game of the Big 12. This is a sick game. Just absolutely an awesome spot. I just said this. I think Kansas is playing the best of anyone in the entire conference. But does that mean that they can get it done here? Well, the spread's bouncing around. They're slight home dogs. Do you think that that's warranted?
Based on what they've done this year, yeah. Coming into the year, I would have had Kansas clearly ahead of Colorado. And this is, I mean, let's just copy and paste the analysis that we just did with the turnover-worthy play stuff from Garrett Green. I mean, we have Jalen Daniels at 16 turnover-worthy plays. He had 7 in the first 3 games against Illinois and UNLV, 2 games they lost and should have won. So what's been the difference since they started winning games now? He has less turnover-worthy plays. I mean, this is the whole deciding factor with Kansas. This team is pretty good. We love it. I have a future on them to win the conference, which is obviously long, long dead. But I only have them 5 spots behind Colorado right now in just overall power rankings. The offense is efficient. They have an amazing offensive line. They're 3rd in run blocking. Devin Neal's an amazing back. Daniels has mobility himself. They've gotten surprise production out of all 3 of their receivers. Now, they do have a little bit of injuries. I think we're going to see Lawrence Arnold miss this game. I'm not 100% sure. He went out early in the last game. Watch his status. But regardless, Luke Grimm, Skinner, they've been awesome just right alongside him. Their defensive concern mainly stems against the run. They're 101st. They're better in pass coverage, which was their strength coming into the year. Their only departures from last year's defense were in the front 7, mainly defensive tackle. So they do match up better against Shedeur Sanders than a lot of teams. I just don't really know if Shedeur is ever going to be stopped by an opposing team at this point. Their offense is humming. Their O-line is way better than last year. This unit's like a top 50 unit in the country, maybe 60-ish if you want to be not as generous with them. Good receivers. Defense is 27th. This is by far the biggest improvement they've made all year. They're great in coverage. 31st defending the run. They should be able to stand up to Kansas. All in all, I have this closer than metrics indicate. Do you want to buy into the volatility with Kansas? Do you think Jalen Daniels has really turned the corner? Because that is just the analysis. When he doesn't turn the ball over, Kansas is, I think, live to win this conference. And when he does, I mean, they're 4-6, and they need to win out to even make a bowl. Just a disaster run out for Kansas this year.
It really has been. But sometimes, even within disaster runouts, you can get actionable spots. And I want to see this game so badly. I'm very excited. I think Kansas is going to knock them off. And I don't even know. I don't have it in front of me. I don't even know. What does that even do? Does it do anything?
It would hurt Colorado. I mean, there's a big log jam in this conference right now. So BYU obviously has the one loss, but then you have Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State all with 2 losses, and just the competitiveness of this conference. They all play out like hyper competitive games the rest of the way. We're talking about Kansas right now. If Colorado can get through this, they have the easiest game left against Oklahoma State. BYU's remaining schedule is Arizona State and Houston. I think Houston, honestly, is more difficult than Oklahoma State right now with some of the life they've shown. But then I think it's going to be tougher for like Arizona State and Iowa State. Arizona State needs this BYU game. Then they play Arizona, so it's okay. Iowa State is the toughest remaining schedule, I think, against Utah and Kansas State. But as you can see, like, there's a competitive game for all of those teams that are still alive in this conference, and you wouldn't be surprised if any of them lost any game at this point.
Certainly wouldn't. Fascinating conference. Dumpster fire. Whoever gets in from the Big 12, I'm sure.
And there are also chaos scenarios. Those are just the 2 loss teams. Like, technically, the 3 loss teams aren't dead yet.
Yeah, I hope we get someone stupid.
Like Baylor. Baylor is alive. They need a ton of help, but they still have a chance.
Good. I hope we get Baylor and they play like Penn State or something.
What was the halftime score of that Baylor game last week? They had like 60
I think it was 35-28, maybe.
Yeah, it was crazy at halftime.
Yeah, because again, West Virginia. Disturbing. All right. Game that I've been waiting for. It's in Yankee Stadium. Army and Notre Dame. Now, let's talk about this. First of all, I love Army. It's an awesome team. I go to their games. They're just awesome. This has been a dream year for them. That's all the cool stuff. Now, here's reality. I hate to say it. We talked about this with Navy. I think Navy's better than Army this year, and Navy got destroyed. I think this is going to end very poorly. There's still some 14s out there. I'll keep this very short and sweet. I think Notre Dame rolls them.
I agree with you. I already bet Notre Dame at 14.
Yeah.
I think that's a good number. I had Navy how far ahead of Army in power rankings just to start the year. I want to do this exercise. Pretty decently ahead of Navy, or excuse me, ahead of Army to start the year. That's just based on like a lot of returning talent stuff. And yeah, I mean, Army's played the easiest schedule in the entire country. Lehigh beat FAU, who just fired their coach, beat Rice, who fired their coach, beat Temple, who's like a bottom 5 team in the country, Tulsa, UAB, who's about to fire their coach, East Carolina, who fired their coach, Air Force, who returned about 2 starters, and North Texas, who just fired their DC. I don't know that they played a single team in the top 100. I mean, Rice and North Texas probably are barely in the top 100. Maybe East Carolina is, but I mean, this is like a bottom 3 schedule in the country. They just don't have the talent to play Notre Dame, flat out. This line should be like 28. All lines are in play. I mean, like, I'm hammering Notre Dame.
I would do anything for Army to win the game. Anything. I would be the happiest person in the world. Army is not built to handle this. Not only is it not bad enough, and I don't think this is a huge deal, but Notre Dame just prepped for something obviously very similar, and they handled it just completely fine. This is just bad. Find the 14, take the 14, and live with the result. I hope Army wins. They're not going to, though. Cool year. Awesome story. Great game. 2 different levels of competition. All right. Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State. So one of the teams that really has been frustrating for me is Jacksonville State this year. I thought they were going to be awesome this year. I come into the season. I bet them against Coastal. They get destroyed. Then they have a couple more games. They get destroyed. They're 0-3. Now they're just rolling through people. They didn't cover last week, which is very frustrating. But they're playing really good football. This is a huge matchup. Sam Houston State last year couldn't buy a win. They lost miraculous games, game after game. They've obviously cleaned that up this year. What do you make of this low-key showdown?
Yeah, this is the game of the year in this conference after
Yes, it is.
Liberty disgraced themselves, and Western Kentucky has done their same a few times. But yeah, there's a 4-team log jam that could potentially win Conference USA. Otherwise, I would have never included this game in the show. But these are the top 2 teams, Sam Houston, Jacksonville State. If you've got multi-screen, I don't know, just quad box, like
You need a lot of screens, but yeah.
I would put this in my top 4 games this week just because it's the winner is the front seat to the conference title game. But anyway, yeah, Sam Houston's really disappointed me of late, especially in their last 2 games, you could go back 3 games, I guess, beating Florida International by 3, Louisiana Tech by 6, and Kennesaw and OT, who fired their coach and has had about half their team enter the transfer portal. Those are 3 really greasy single-digit victories. And Jacksonville State has sort of gotten it together. They lost their first 3 games, and part of the problem initially was they didn't play Tyler Hoff. I mean, they were playing Logan Smothers in their first game. He immediately threw multiple interceptions against Coastal Carolina. And this team is not built to play from behind the way they play. It's a very run team. I mean, it's a Rich Rod team. They're going to be super fast and super run heavy. When you force them to play from behind, they're going to have problems. Then they lost to Louisville. They're just going to lose that game. The Eastern Michigan game, they had a 65% post-game win expectancy. Now, they've messed around with opponents a little bit lately, but their strength of schedule is a little better. FIU, probably a little better than I thought. We mentioned them in the Sam Houston schedule, but this team beat Liberty, which is a resounding win for them. And when you dive into some of the metrics for these teams, I think Tyler Huff is a better straight-up quarterback than Watson. Their turnover-worthy plays, honestly, it favors Tyler Huff. He has 8 of them. Watson is 13. And both of them have been converting turnover-worthy plays to interceptions at about the same rate, so there's nothing really underlying these metrics that you would look at and think is like a buy low or a sell high. But Huff is also a better runner. Just overall rushing efficiency, this guy's awesome. Over 600 yards rushing this year. They have, in my opinion, the better offensive line in this game. I think it's relatively close, but overall, it's like 37th run blocking for Jacksonville State to 92nd for Sam Houston, 98th in pass blocking to 102nd, so slight edges there. And then Jacksonville State just has the better defense. And more importantly, they're better against the run. Sam Houston's 99, Jacksonville State is 67th. So I do like Jacksonville State in this game. I think it's going to be relatively up-tempo because of Jacksonville State. Like Houston, 78, they're average in pace. But there's definitely volatility in this game. The biggest thing is probably like special teams, and I rarely say this. Sam Houston 116, Jacksonville State 132nd.
Ooh.
So I don't know if I want to lay almost a touchdown, but I do think Jacksonville State wins this game.
What about over 55.5?
That's interesting. You've got like these 2 counteracting points, like run game success bleeds the clock. Plus, like, what has Sam Houston's offense been doing for 3 straight games?
Yeah, I don't have that.
4 straight, really. They had 14 points against Western Kentucky. Like, this team started out the year crushing Rice, who had to fire their coach. They lost to UCF. That's going to happen. They beat Hawaii, who's not great. They crushed New Mexico State, who's the worst team in this conference. The Texas State win is kind of just like the biggest feather in their
game.
Yeah, and Texas State gave them the game. Sam Houston had a 37% post-game win expectancy. So I don't know. The recent play has me nervous on offense for Sam Houston. Their injuries don't really line up. Malik Phillips has barely played this year. They did lose Markendrick Bell at guard, but I mean, that really derails your whole season. This is the healthiest Jacksonville State's been in a while. I don't know. I might lay the points.
I don't know what their defense was doing last week, but that's another story for another time.
Kennesaw.
Disturbing. I'm going to keep an eye on that game. I'm with you, though. Jacksonville State's a team, like I said, I bet them last week to anti-success against FIU, but they did get the job done in terms of survive and advance for them. Probably go right back to them. Kentucky and Texas. Kentucky has been a spoiler throughout the year. They're not the easiest out. I don't know what Texas is doing here and there. Like they were messing around with Arkansas. 20.5 here. I don't think this stays close.
I agree with you. And I don't think Texas is as good as people think they are. They've played the
Right.
easiest SEC schedule this year, and it's only been made easier because of the just run on backup quarterbacks they keep facing. The second they play like Arkansas, they almost lose the game, like a 10-point margin of victory. They could have lost that game. I think they were the rightful winners, but it's just closer than you would have expected. But can Kentucky really test Texas at this point? Like the fact that Kentucky has a win over Ole Miss is just absolutely amazing to me. Good job, Lane Kiffin. Like, I think you don't deserve to be in the playoff because of that. Kentucky was playing Cutter Boley at QB, and he's bad. He did not look good, but at this point, there's been rhetoric that Cutter Boley is going to get snaps to finish the year. That all started because Brock Vandegrift is banged up and hasn't been able to make it through games. So, I mean, if Cutter Boley is going to play at any snaps whatsoever, like this team is probably just stone dead. They have a ton of injuries, but this is really hard to parse because they played Murray State last week. So, like, these late season FCS bye weeks are so hard to. I'll run through who missed. Like, some of these guys will probably play. Brock Vandegrift obviously was banged up. Barian Brown at receiver didn't play. Gerald Mincy, he's been out for a while, so I don't think he plays. But then J.J. Weaver missed their game. He might be back. De'Eric Jackson at linebacker is out for the year. DJ Waller at corner. Deone Walker, defensive tackle. Damon Jumas-Johnson, he missed their last game. He's questionable. Khalil Saunders at the edge. So now you have to stop Quinn Ewers, who has not been very good, but he doesn't have to do anything because his skill position players are so awesome and the O-line is amazing. Texas probably scores at will in this game. Kentucky's defense is horrendous. And yeah, Arkansas's defense was horrendous too. But the one thing that's different here is Arkansas had a bunch of injuries. So I think there is potential that they were just better than we thought throughout the year. Kentucky can't stop the run or the pass. They're 74th in run defense, 69th against the pass. Texas should score. And then Texas has arguably the best defense in the country right now. This is top 5 unit. I'm not backing Cutter Boley or whatever. I don't know, man. I'm debating laying the points. I hate these huge spreads because it largely comes down to motivation. But I don't know. It's either that or maybe a Kentucky team total under. I'm not sure they score in this game.
I knew you were going to say that. That is something I might look to too. Because Kentucky, I don't know how they're going to move. And we've seen Texas do this a couple, Oklahoma comes to, there's been a couple games where teams are not offensively equipped to deal with Texas. And I don't think Kentucky is at all.
Texas, I mean, the level of competition, especially opposing quarterback space, is low. But they answer every question, and the times they have stepped up, like against Beck, Pavia, it's been good. So, I mean, Taylor Green, honestly, like holding him to 6 yards per attempt is pretty good too. I think Texas, before I was like, okay, is this team actually top 5 or are they top 20? Now I'm getting to like, all right, this team are they top 5 or are they just top 10? Like, this is a great defense.
Yeah, and Kentucky's just not equipped. So I hear you. That's a little more interesting to me than 20.5. Obviously, if it moves 21, I won't even have a decision. I'm not playing 3 touchdowns. 20.5 maybe. Another one, and you mentioned all these like pseudo buys. Alabama was taking on Mercer. Shout out to Mercer. Good people. They play Oklahoma, which might as well be Mercer. Down in Norman, I don't know. I mean, what is Oklahoma realistically able to do here?
They got a lot of guys back from injury.
Okay, that's step 1.
Yeah, I mean, they're not as bad. So they returned Deion Burks and Jaleel Farouk. So you're no longer throwing 2 players that had to be moved from defense. So yeah, I mean, now you have like Jaleel Farouk, Deion Burks, some combination of like Brennan Thompson, Petway, and Hester to round out your receiving core. Barnes and Tatum are healthy-ish. Jackson Arnold is what he is. The O-line stinks. That's just not going to get better because of injuries. But yeah, I mean, your skill position players are a little better. The defense has never really been the problem with this team. They have an awesome defense this year. So it's like, can you generate enough offense against Alabama to like cover a spread? I personally think it's still not enough points. Like getting these guys back makes me want to consider Oklahoma. But man, like 14 points against Bama, who still should score even though it's a good defense. They just have so many ways to beat you with Ryan Williams. They're getting more out of their run game. A lot of that's just Milroe solo at this point. But their offensive line, again, I don't understand the like ebbs and flows with this unit. They started out terribly. You could attribute that to players like Proctor being out. They came back, played well, and then they had like this lapse mid-season where they were giving up a lot of pressure. Now they've kind of turned the corner again. I think this is a talented unit. They're going to have their work cut out for them against Oklahoma, who's 16th in pass rush, which could derail things for Milroe at times. It has happened before, but I just don't buy Oklahoma scoring many points, even with the receivers back. This offensive line is just a fatal flaw for this unit, and it's going to be the rest of the way. And man, Oklahoma played, this is not anything pertaining to this game, but Oklahoma beating Temple, Houston, Tulane, and Auburn, and Maine. I just do not want to see this team in a bowl game so badly. Like, please, Alabama, take care of business. Please have Oklahoma finish at 5-7 so I can be done ever talking about this version of Oklahoma. I'm so sick of them.
I know you just mentioned you don't think it has a huge uptick for their offense, but I'll be honest, I thought 47 was a little light.
I think that could be true.
Like,
Oklahoma is still, I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at their splits since they made the OC change. I will do that right now, but they are 15th in pace.
I just think they're going to be able to manufacture 17 to 20. And I think Alabama gets there. I think Alabama can hit 30 points in this game.
They have not slowed at all.
Yeah. I don't worry about pace. And
it's the same pace as when they had Luttrell.
47's light. I'm telling you. I think because there's equity that Alabama scores 35 points themselves.
There definitely is. And Alabama has shown lapses at times. Overall, their defensive gradings come in pretty good here. But this team is not playing at full strength. Like, Keon Sabb is still out at safety. They did lose Quindarius Robinson for the year. He's one of their edge rushers. And Devontae Smith, he's been playing, but there have been a couple games now where Devontae Smith is warmed up, and I'm like, oh, he's good to go. And then he plays like severely limited snaps. So I don't know. He's been very injured for a while. He's going to play corner for them if he's healthy. That's a lot of guys in the back end.
Yeah. Keep an eye on that over. That one's going to be on my short list. All right, a couple more games. Again, you guys know the drill. If you have any questions about any games we didn't get to, hit us in the comments. You can tweet us, Matt_Gajewski, @JazzRazBets, or, of course, take advantage of that deal and you get the free month. Just talk to us in Discord. We're hanging out there all day, dropping plays, answering questions, doing all that good stuff. Let's talk about this would be an interesting one. Talk to me about Penn State. Apparently, I can't bring it up over here, but I will in a second. They take on Minnesota. What, if any, is Minnesota's chances to knock them off? And if they somehow did, would Penn State be out?
This would be a bad loss.
This to me would throw a real wrench into things because I think they still might get in.
I agree. 2 losses in the Big Ten is probably enough to get in.
It's so disgusting.
But yeah, I mean, I like this Minnesota team. They're just like Auburn of the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's perfect. That sums it up nicely.
It's so frustrating. I don't think they have a great quarterback. They're playing with a game manager in Brosmer. He can't run. 8 turnover-worthy plays, 4 picks, 6.9 yards per attempt, 67% completion. He's not pushing the ball down the field. And they do have some decent pass-catching options. Jackson's actually been a real difference maker for this team. But anytime they sustain injuries, it's like Rutgers. They can't play with backups. The only backup they had that was any good was Coy Parrish, and he's now having to play because Darius Green is out. And they did lose Aiden Gooseby at corner again. He re-injured his hamstring. So you have weaknesses in the secondary. Tyler Cooper, their guard, missed. Darius Taylor kept coming in and out of the game to get his ankle retaped. They're coming off a bye, so perhaps these injuries aren't as big of a deal as I'm making them out to be. But Penn State's still healthy. Penn State can easily beat Minnesota by the spread if they want to. It's kind of just the biggest thing with Penn State all year is they'll take their foot off the gas. Fortunately, they didn't against Purdue, and maybe they feel their margin of error is diminished because they took a loss. But yeah, Minnesota, they have a pretty strong defense overall. They're 19th against the run, 25th in coverage. Penn State, same thing, awesome defense. So I don't know, maybe I side Penn State's direction because I think they have the far better offense, even though they still have limitations. It's kind of just the Tyler Warren show and then manufacture a big play with Kotelnicki and use your backs. Minnesota is just so limited offensively. I don't know. I could honestly be talked into an under here.
That's again where I'm more interested, and that's why I don't want to bet Penn
Holy
State.
smokes, it's down to 45.
That's the thing. So it's a weird situation. It's low, but this is kind of why I don't want to bet Penn State. The value of these points is a lot. I'm not looking to bet Minnesota, though, either. To me, this could mirror what we saw with Oregon and Wisconsin a little last week, of just like a greasy game. I think Penn State's going to pull it out, but I don't think it's going to be smooth.
Man, that game was atrocious.
That was
right now. The implied scores are like 28-17.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I could see it being like 23-16.
Yeah, I'm interested in this.
Penn State is bad.
Penn State is 117th. Minnesota's 109th.
Yeah, and I watched the game last week. Penn State wasn't exactly. They just Purdue is so bad that you can't not score. And I don't think he got hurt badly, but Aller he took like a cleat or something, and they brought in the other guy. He was throwing it all around. So Purdue is really
this season.
Purdue. First of all, Purdue. We don't even have time for this, but Purdue painted their end zone horribly. So guys were.
Oh, I saw that.
Everything Purdue does is wrong.
Well, Ryan Walters, there's been reports that he's coaching for his job the last 2 games. And spoiler, he's 13.5-point underdogs to Michigan State.
And then they
just got
Indiana.
Rolled. I don't know. I think Ryan Walters is about done at Purdue.
It's not working. I didn't think they were going to be this bad, but they are. All right. Last game. Then we'll get to some best bets, and we'll get on out of here. Cincinnati and Kansas State. I genuinely don't know the answer to this. Who are these games? How relevant is this game to the big picture?
It's extremely relevant for Kansas State, who's barely treading water to keep their playoff hopes alive. Cincinnati's done, but yeah, I don't know. They've got some like coaching stuff they need to figure out. They're going to have some decisions to make. I kind of like Kansas State in this game. We have a lot of injuries in Cincinnati, and the biggest one is Dante Corleone got hurt in their last game. Haven't heard an update, so make sure you search his status before playing anything, especially if you're like watching this later in the week. Cincinnati might have just quit. The frequency of freshmen used on this defense especially is just way higher than it's been earlier in the season, and they're not that hurt on defense. Like, the only new injury was Dante Corleone. So while you're already in evaluation mode and trying to get players on the field in competitive Big 12 games, they might have just flat out quit. Sorsby's regressed a little bit. He only has 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but up to 10 turnover-worthy plays. Completion percentage and yards per attempt have both dropped plenty since conference play started. Their O-line is still awesome, and they can run the ball, which is, I think, the biggest asset this team has moving forward. Kansas State's defense is definitely not where it's been in recent years, but their main weakness is through the air. They're 97th in coverage. They're 35th against the run. So they do match up well against a good Cincinnati offensive line. Avery Johnson is right in this bucket with Garrett Green, Jalen Daniels, and all these players that have turnover problems. He's run poorly, 12 turnover-worthy plays compared to, like 16 for Daniels and Green. 9 interceptions, though, so converting at a high rate. He does run the ball, and they have a pretty good run game with Giddens and Edwards, and their offensive line's not bad. They're 39th in pass blocking, 53rd in run blocking, just not quite as good as last year. But on defense, if Corleone misses this game, that's like their only strength. He's their best player by far. Or if he's even limited, then Kansas should be able to run it down their throats. This is kind of a late news spot maybe. Watch for Corleone's status throughout the week. If he's out or limited, I'm probably just going to hit Kansas State. And I might hit them anyway. I think this is a good spot for them against Cincinnati, who's doing some weird stuff just across the board. I'm not really sure what they're doing.
I can be talked into that. Yeah, Kansas State still got a lot to play for. Talent is there. They're at home in Manhattan.
Sign me up. Defense has been horrendous. Cincinnati, 10.4 yards per attempt to Markiel, 10.8 to Shadur, 7.1 to Rocco Beck. Not good, not bad. Ja'Craig Brown was at 10.4 yards per attempt. The only guy they've held in check recently in the last 6 games has been Jeff Sims.
Yeah, that's not
They got the Jeff Sims game for Arizona State.
Yeah, the Jeff Sims game, that doesn't count. Sorry to say. Okay, here we go. We have talked about a bunch of games. Again, I'm going to mention, if you want more questions, all that stuff, you guys know this. If you missed it earlier in the show, sign up for our partners to get a month free. Just click the link below, follow the instructions. You're in business, friends. Let's talk about best bets. Let's talk about them. Where are we going? What are the first clicks on the card?
Far and away, Notre Dame.
I can't even click that because I'm in New York, but yes.
You got to drive across state lines.
I 100%. I mean, I can get to Connecticut very quickly. I'm betting Notre Dame this week.
Notre Dame, are they number one for you too?
Yes. So at 14, and you can get 14, yes.
Yeah, collective number one for both of us. I haven't taken this yet. I'm going to have some position on either Texas or Kentucky team total under. I think it's most likely to be Kentucky team total under right now. Just not sure how I want to play that, but there's for sure going to be something that is a Kentucky fade in this spot. Those will be my top two.
I'm going to go to Ohio State. I'm just going to trust my read. I've been waiting for this game. I think that they kind of just show, although Indiana's a really cool team and has had a great year, I don't think they're ready for this particular test. And I'm going to trust my secondary read here. I like what you said about Kansas State. I'm absolutely on board with that. I'm going over in the Alabama-Oklahoma game. I think that Oklahoma, despite being god-awful, will put together a couple of quality plays. Alabama's defense is not invincible. And then you have Miller on the other side. He'll do his part. That game is going to mirror kind of what we saw last week with Missouri. There'll be big plays in that game. Sign me up for an over in Alabama-Oklahoma. There we go.
I'm in.
We've done it. Friends, it's going to be real interesting. We're going to get more clarity. And again, come back on Thursday. We got more content dropping. But until then, you'll have to settle for this. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hit the like button on your way out. Please share the show. It really helps us out. Let's cash some tickets for me, for Matt, and for everybody here at Odd Shopper. Good luck and joy. See you in a couple days.